Oh, well, goodness me. Oh, hi. Welcome to Liberty.me Live. And this is Free Association. And I am Lucy Steigerwald. And over there in California, presumably, is Sheldon Richman. And we're here, like we're always here, every other Tuesday. And we're here to talk, as usual. And I'm not really warmed up yet, so I'm going to make Sheldon, as usual, carry the weight and start off our little chat. What are we talking about tonight?
It's our fortnightly making fun of Donald Trump.
That's all we do now, nonstop.
This is all Trump all the time.
Oh,
well,
God.
Of course, I guess since we last spoke, he became the presumptive candidate nominee.
According to his big Twitter banner, yes.
Yes, unless Cruz jumps back in if he has a huge showing in Nebraska tonight.
Oh, God.
But I wouldn't put any money on that.
No.
So anyway, I thought we would talk some substance here, and then we can get into just dishing dirt and trash talking later. But the substance is Trump made some pronouncements about the national debt, which is of interest to libertarians. We don't like the government borrowing money. We wanted to not spend anything and not tax anything. But short of that, we would prefer that it only take in a little bit of money and only spend a little money, presumably on totally innocuous things like, I don't know, printing flags or something, something that doesn't do any harm maybe to anybody. And that the budget be in balance, so it's not taking any more money than it's spending. And of course, again, let me emphasize, I'm not for any spending. I was talking about second best, or a very distant second best. Anyway, Trump was expounding about the debt because he's promised to pay it off in, 8 years or 10 years? It's like 19 trillion and headed upward. And a couple of weeks ago or months ago, he said he would pay it off in 8 or 10 years. I forget the exact number. But then for some reason he started talking this week about it, and he said, "Well, we could always renegotiate and buy back the debt at a discount. In other words, pay the bondholders less than 100 cents on the dollar." Well, and that sent shockwaves all over the place because if you actually were to do that, and by the way, I'll say a little bit about I'm now speaking just sort of mainstream, okay, just to lay it out. I'll give you my libertarian view of all this in a minute. The investment in U.S. Treasury bills of various kinds and T-bills and bonds and stuff like that are considered the safest investments in the world because the government's counting on not to default. Now, there have been implicit defaults, of course, over the years. Inflation is an implicit default, but inflation's been very low lately. So the government generally is able to borrow at very advantageous rates, low rates, because it's considered a very, very safe investment. Well, here's Trump saying, well, maybe it won't be so safe. Now maybe you won't get 100 cents on the dollar. And if he were president and able actually to credibly tell people that, and people actually believed it, then they'd want higher interest rates. So it'd be pushing interest rates up. So it's one of these deals where if you squeeze the balloon at one point, at one place, it pops out somewhere else. Because if he were to do that and interest rates would go up, then it would cost the government more to borrow, for new debt. So it'd be borrowing money to pay off the old debt, but it wouldn't end up saving because it would be paying more interest on the new debt because interest rates would go up in anticipation of this new lack of safety in the investment. So it's one of these things where there's a lot of moving parts, and if you do something here, something else is going to be affected there. But Trump doesn't seem to understand this, even though he declared himself the king of debt. He said, "I'm the king of debt. I understand debt better than anybody." You ever notice how he understands everything better than everybody? It's really quite incredible that we have such a person, and we really should not let him get away. That's my attitude. So, and then he said, so then when people said, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be a default," and that's terrible. what about the full faith and credit of the United States? And also there's a line in the Constitution that says the credit of the United States shall not be questioned. I don't know if that means if you and I question it on this program, are the cops going to FBI going to break in and arrest us for questioning the debt, doing something unconstitutional? I don't know. I'm a little worried. So I'll just say this is all hypothetical. And NSA and FBI, CIA. Anyway, they said, oh my gosh, he's going to default. So then he came back to comfort us and say, no, wait a second. The government never defaults. It can print money. Well, that didn't exactly comfort us. So this is his wheelhouse. Okay, this is the area he claims he's the expert. He says he knows debt. He loves debt. He's great at debt. He's the king of debt. He called himself the king of debt. I think he sees himself on the the bow of the Titanic, yet claiming he's the king of debt of the world. So I don't know that he comforted anybody. So it just gets crazier and crazier. So I'll toss that out to begin the conversation. Oh, by the way, as a libertarian now, this is see I'm for repudiation of the debt. So I'm for defaulting and not saying we're not paying anybody back, because the only way we can pay people back is by doing immoral things like taxing other people. So we're not going to tax, therefore we can't pay the debt. That's fine with me. I take Jeff Hummel's position. If you go to the online library Liberty, Liberty Fund site, or Google Jeffrey Rogers Hummel and repudiate the debt, you'll find some good stuff. I mean, he's a good, solid historian and economist. So it's not just off the top of his head. Okay, it's not like Trump. Somebody actually has some theory and history to argue to you about this. But because I don't, and if the government were to repudiate its debt, no one would want to lend the government money, and that's good.
Right.
We don't want people lending the government money. But Trump is not in that position. He doesn't want to put himself in a position where, if he were president, he couldn't borrow money. So, I can say it, and it's not inconsistent. But he can't say it without being inconsistent, because he does want to borrow. He believes in debt. So, anyway, what say you about this, Lucy?
I confess that the proper response to debt, I haven't even started to think about that in my own ideological terms, because all I think about is the government is going to be dead forever, and then I sort of left, and that's not good. So that's sort of yet another avenue of thinking that I haven't really spent enough brain power on. But I mean, I was struck by the pure brilliance of just printing all the money, so that everything will be fine if we just print enough money. That's
now it's true. The government it has been under quantitative easing, has been buying, I guess, older Treasury bills and then also bad mortgages and mortgage securities from banks ever since the 2008 Great Recession, and it pays not by physically printing money. It doesn't need to waste paper or kill trees for that. It just, on computer records, electrons, and there's an unlimited number of electrons, I guess. It just credits the bank's Fed accounts. Banks that are members of the system have accounts at the Fed. Like you and I have a checking account, they have accounts at the Fed where they have reserves, and so it just credits those accounts with X billion dollars or whatever it is they're paying for that paper, but they're paying them interest so that they'll keep the money in the Fed account. That's why we're not seeing the inflation that's been predicted by lots of people. Mainly Austrians that were predicting this, and Peter Schiff and people like that, who years ago, meaning back in 2008 when the Fed started doing this, claimed we're going to see hyperinflation. But we haven't seen hyperinflation. We haven't really even seen much an uptick in even mild inflation. So the reason is they pay interest on the reserves. And this was the first time they'd ever done this, beginning around 2008 or so. So and I think they recently raised the rate. They were paying 0.25%, and I was told lately that they raised it, but I don't know what the new rate is. Anyway, that's been keeping the money safely in their Fed accounts, not getting out into the economy. That's why we're not seeing prices, rising in a crazy way.
I think,
but that's not what Trump. That's not what
Yeah.
Trump's talking about. Trump's talking about going to the Chinese if necessary, or other holders of government bonds, which could be my 401k or people's, and then buying those back at less than the face value. And if it does that, from his point of view, he really would not like the results, because it would mean the government is not reliable. Now, I read today in The Economist an article I sent you, Lucy, which I'm sure you read and absorbed and memorized. And
I may have been occupied.
We'll test you on it later. But they point out that some long-term bonds of the U.S. Are actually trading above par, because they were first issued when interest rates were higher. Interest rates have been very low, right, since 2008, mainly because there's not a big demand for loans by business. So interest rates are extremely low, as we all know, and especially for big borrowers. And long-term bonds that were issued when rates are higher are in demand. People want them because they have a higher yield. Today, the things that are being issued have a relatively lower yield. So they're trading at more than 100 cents on the dollar. In fact, they point out that one long-term loan, which doesn't mature until 2030, is trading at 152 cents to the dollar. So if Trump's going to buy those back, he'd have to offer what, 155 cents to the dollar? That doesn't sound like, I don't see how that saves. How's that, from his point of view, how's that save the government money? So it's one of these things where he thinks things up on the fly, even in an area that he claims he's an expert in. And you just see this repeatedly. I saw recently again the clip where he was talking to Chris Matthews, not to change the issue to abortion, but I just want to use it as an example. You remember the infamous day when he said women who get abortions should be punished too?
Yeah.
If you watch that clip, and I'm sure you can find it, you will swear, given the expression on his face. Now, this isn't an absolute guarantee, I know, but we learn to read expressions, just people do, just generally every day. He is thinking about that question for the very first time.
I have no doubt.
You can see it on his face.
And
Chris Matthews says, should the woman be punished too? And he's saying, yeah. That's exactly what he does. So this is not something thought out, and either is this interest rate plan. This is not something he's done any work on. He's like that guy, that kid that nobody liked in school, who thought he could talk his way out of anything, thought he was so smart and so articulate that he never needed to do any homework. He could wing it. His intuitions were going to be so great that he never need to do any preparation. And he could just, again, talk his way out of any situation. That's what we have here.
Yeah, I think that partially explains why every once in a while he is either right or in the neighborhood of right on an issue, which he may change his mind on a day or a week later.
Right.
I mean, in one of the libertarian groups I'm in on Facebook, someone was pointing out that in early September 2015, Trump was saying, well, it's kind of unfortunate, but I guess we have to let some Syrian refugees in because humanitarianism and stuff.
Yeah.
Literally 3 weeks later, he had changed his mind on that issue, which actually for him is probably a solid chunk of time to be correct on an issue. And with the idiotic culture war about trans people in bathrooms, he was actually strangely decent initially.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz hit him on that, absurdly full of fear-mongering, paternalistic fear-mongering as usual. And Trump, I believe, sort of halfway backed off and said something vague about the states and such should decide. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
He was initially actually...
and like the minimum wage. Same thing on the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
He said the minimum wage, in a debate, he said the minimum wage shouldn't be raised. Then, recently, in an interview, he said, I'm not like other Republicans. I'm willing to look at that because I don't see how you can live on $7.50. But this is all one answer now. This is within 10 seconds. He says that, and then he says, but I'm going to create just great jobs that no one's going to be making. People will be making more than $15 an hour. So he doesn't address the idea of new entrants in the labor market and very unskilled people. And then he says in the same answer again, except Wolf Blitzer interrupted him, so you couldn't fully hear what he said, but I think we know what he said. He said something like, if you play around at the low end, meaning that low wage, the low end of the wage scale, something like that, you're not going to be competitive. Now, that's not the same thing as saying workers are going to lose their jobs. He's saying the companies aren't going to be competitive. And then Wolf Blitzer talked over him, so that point didn't really get explored. So he packs all that into like a 10-second answer. Then later he says, a couple days later, I think the state should handle it because $750 may be too low in New York City, but maybe somewhere else $750 is okay. So then when they ask his surrogates on TV, isn't that a contradiction? He said no minimum wage increase. Now he's saying the state should raise it. They say, oh, well, no, that's perfectly consistent. When he said no minimum wage increase, he meant the federal government shouldn't raise the minimum wage. Now he's saying the state could do it if they want. So he's always doing stuff like that.
Well, at least there's a spasm of correctness in the fact that if there was a minimum wage, it's even worse to make it a federal one, based, of course, on cost of living being quite different in different places. Yeah. So, as usual, not at all the best case option for the Libertarian, but I think state minimum wage is certainly better than federal.
Yeah, but we don't know what he's going to come up with tomorrow.
Right. This is why it's such a meaningless exercise, even as we're doing it right now, to talk about what he actually believes and what sort of president he would actually be like.
Yeah. And
that's why I find that people who are convinced he's a true isolationist, he's Pat Buchanan Jr., for the good and the bad that implies, and also the people who are convinced that it's self-evident that he is much worse than Hillary Clinton. And I know libertarians who are swearing both, and I sit baffled, thinking, how could you possibly know? But also, that's saying a lot that someone's definitely worse than Hillary Clinton. People who I know libertarians who actually intend to vote for her, which, considering that one damn vote isn't going to do anything, I honestly find much more infuriating and upsetting than I need to. But I always feel that the least that libertarians can possibly do is not vote for one of the two idiots who are going to win. One idiot who will win or the other who might win. And the least that the entire nation could do is not grant someone as cheerfully hawkish as Hillary Clinton such power. I mean, and we're probably going to do that, I would say. And plenty of libertarians I know are going to vote for her or for Trump. And yes, I'm getting annoyed again just thinking about it.
No, I always say, thank goodness one vote doesn't count.
Yes, quite.
Because I can stay home and not feel any pangs whatsoever of any kind. Another case where he's done the same sort of thing, and then we'll have to say something about foreign policy because that's where the libertarians who are friendly to Trump seem to hang their hat. I have one particular person in mind that you and I like to fight with a lot on Twitter. But anyway, on taxes, because he said this week, he seemed to say this week that he was going to raise taxes on the wealthy. So then when he got questioned about that, he said, oh, no, I never said I was going to raise taxes on the wealthy from what they're paying today. I meant I may have to raise taxes on the wealthy from the low point my original tax plan was going to put them at. Well, that's not what he said. He said he and other rich people were going to pay significantly more money. He said that some months ago. He even then made it personal and said, I'm going to pay a lot more money. That was a long time ago. Now, when he says it again, he get a bad reaction because Republicans don't like to raise taxes on rich people. He had to say, no, I didn't mean I was going to raise it from their current rate. I just mean I may have to negotiate when I present my plan to Congress, and I'll have to raise it above the lower rate I was planning to put it at. So who knows? Who knows what it'll be tomorrow? Every moment is a snapshot, and you're right. You run the peril of spending time analyzing something he said, only to find out tomorrow he says something different. It reminds me a little bit of the reason Hayek never reviewed Keynes's general theory. Famous story, because Hayek lived to regret it. But he had earlier reviewed Keynes's book, I think an essay on money or something like that. And by the time the review got into print, Keynes had already disavowed the book. So Hayek, when the general theory comes out in 36, Hayek says, I'm not going to put into a lot of work and review this thing because it'll be disavowed before the review comes out. Well, unfortunately, the book didn't get disavowed. And Hayek never forgave himself.
But they did have that great rap battle, which
well, that wasn't actually them, Lucy. Those were like actors recently.
That's the only example of white people rapping about something that intends to be informative that actually works so well because it has so much information in it.
Those were great. Great. Of course, they did the sequel too. Yes, wonderful. Russ Roberts and John Papola. Yeah, should get some huge award for that.
I was gonna joke, but not really. Earlier, when you were talking about all the serious bombs and debt stuff, I was like, I can only retain this when it's being rapped at me by actors playing Hayek games.
Oh, it was
the
great.
Only way I learned.
It was great poetry. Yes, it was. It was really wonderful. Very good. Sorry, I got us off on the subject on Keynes.
No, that was me.
And Hayek had his birthday last week.
Okay.
So it's okay. It's just okay that we talk about Hayek a little bit.
I was just God. That reminds me of I was reading a Chris Coyne and someone else paper about sort of fallacies of central planning and foreign intervention, and I was just really excited that someone way more academic and legitimate than I had been using that same argument. Like I didn't think I invented it. I haven't even read that much Hayek.
Abigail Hull was probably the
that sounds right. Yeah.
And they have a book, an entire book on that subject coming out.
Do that? Oh God, I got to review that. Huh?
Yeah. Some of the stuff. I know the Independent Review had one paper, which will be a chapter, and I think they've maybe published something else from it, or that will end up in the book somewhere else. I forget, but I think it's called the boomerang effect. That's the whole idea, right? The U.S. comes up with these methods of social control to be used on foreign populations as part of intervention, and then somehow they make their way home, and then we suffer them. So it's the boomerang.
Could be the new ratchet effect. It's going to take
and they talk about the ratchet effect.
By storm. You got to talk about the ratchet effect.
So that's going to be a good book. So anyway, just to finish up on Trump for a second here, here's a man who's so concerned about debt. Just again to show the coherence of the Trump campaign. He wants to increase military spending by a tremendous amount. I don't know if he's put a number on it, but he wants. We're already spending more than what the next seven. They always say the next seven countries. I think the U.S. bill is about 42% of the world's military budget, and I don't know if that's using the Bob Higgs number. Bob took a look at other spending that's not in the Pentagon but is still military. Like you got Veterans Affairs, you have the nuclear weapon stuff, which is in the Energy Department. You put all that together, it's not the $600 billion that the Pentagon shows. It's like 1.2 trillion. So I don't know if that means it's how many more countries than 7 we're spending more, and how much higher than 42%. I'm not sure if it adjusts for that number. Anyway, we spend a huge amount, as he would say. But he wants to spend even more so that no one will mess with us, right? He doesn't want to talk about entitlements at all, right? He doesn't want to. He said no entitlements will be touched, so-called entitlements, Social Security, the social safety net stuff, which is in big trouble because it has all these unfunded liabilities stretching out over the next. They usually figure like on a 75-year basis, I think, but you're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars that are to be paid to people that they have no accounting of where the money's coming from. They're just going to wing it. He doesn't want to touch any of that. This is where he runs up against Ryan, right? Because Paul Ryan, this is a big cause of Paul Ryan's, is reform of entitlement spending. So in other words, Trump is planning to increase the debt. He complains about the debt, but it sounds like he's going to be increasing the debt quite a bit, and I guess offering other, China and other holders of the debt, I don't know what, 50 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar. Who knows what he's planning to pay them? So it's a really nutty a nutty thing that shows, he hasn't given this 1 minute of thought. But are we supposed to put all that aside and say, yes, but he said NATO is obsolete? Well, I heard him tell Wolf Blitzer in the same interview where he was talking about taxes, I guess it was, or the not the debt, but it was some other issue, where he said he's not against the world being the U.S. being the world's policeman. He said that. He said not only was he not against it, he prefers it. All he wants is that we get paid for it, that the people who benefit from it pay, that not be free riders. So that's what his position on the obsolescence of NATO comes down to. They're just not paying. They should be paying us.
Right.
And then there's also a coherence in saying, with regard to the Arab countries in the Middle East, first, ISIS is a threat to us, so we're gonna destroy them. He says right away, right, really fast. He says real fast. They don't know. They won't know where. They won't know when. But we're also going to be getting help from the Muslim countries, right, in the Middle East. But what if they don't help? He says, well, you need to be able to walk away. But you can't just say, well, walk away if you start off by saying it's in the U.S. national security. Now, I don't buy any of this, of course, but I'm just looking at it on his terms. You can't say they're a threat to us, you're going to help us, but if you don't help us, we're walking away. Isn't that incoherent? What about it's a threat to us? So, again, there's this massive contradiction. And the same goes for the other stuff. Presumably, he would think Russia, I know he says he's going to be able to work with Russia and all that, but, keeping in mind Trump's personality, what's he going to do when Putin pushes back at him? You think he's going to say, oh, come on, let's go out for a beer, Vladimir, or a vodka, we could talk this over? I don't think so. So this leads to a bigger point. You can pull out isolated statements that Trump makes and say, oh, see, it's a sea change, which is the term used by our Twitter friend, who argues for Trump's foreign policy. It's a sea change. He doesn't, but it's based on lies, for one thing. He says he was against Libya. He wasn't against Libya. I put on Facebook this past week a video blog he did in 2011. You can find it. A video blog, so we see his face, we hear his voice, the mouth matches up with the words. Nobody fooled with this. It's him saying, Gaddafi is doing horrible things. Why aren't we doing something about this? We have men already there in the region. What are they doing? What are they up to? We're going to look back on this like this is the most horrible thing. No, he didn't use the word genocide, but that's what he was getting at. That was Hillary's position, right? They were going to commit genocide in Benghazi. And there was no evidence for that. He hadn't committed genocide in other cities where he went after rebels. He was going after rebels. And I'm not a Gaddafi fan, but I want to get the facts right. So here he was taking Hillary's position on Libya. So today he claims, I was always against Libya. Look at the mess in Libya. And then we know the same thing with Iraq, right? He claimed he was against the Bush's invasion of Iraq. No, he wasn't. Howard Stern asked him on September 11th, 2002. We didn't invade until March of 2003. What do you think of this going into Iraq? Are you in favor of this? He said, I guess so. I think I'm paraphrasing, but this is what he meant. His father should have done this the first time. They should have done this the first time. Remember, they left Saddam in power. George H.W. Bush did in 1991.
I will argue that point a smidgen, which is that
Go ahead.
I believe the Howard Stern thing, it felt a little tentative, but more importantly, he was more overtly against it in 2004, I believe. And
yeah, but it was long afterwards. He claims he was against going in advance. He says he was the only one saying.
I mean,
he lies.
He lies all the time, but compared to our genius elite pundits, being against the war in Iraq in 2004 is pretty good, because the bomb
things were pretty messy in 2004. Okay, we're marking on a really steep curve.
Oh, we are. My God, we are. I know it, but I'm just saying.
But not our Twitter friend isn't. Well, I guess our Twitter friend maybe he is. I don't know.
I do so much arguing about foreign policy on Twitter. It's hard to keep.
But that's the stuff that's supposed to get us excited.
Twitter friends.
that's what's supposed to get us so excited. That's supposed to be the evidence for the sea change when
Well,
there's no there there. No, he said today that these are stupid policies because that's part of his shtick. He's
yeah.
against the establishment. So
And
you go hitting at what
because
the people in power have done. That doesn't mean he won't do it himself later.
and isolationists love him, and in my book, isolationists are going to prioritize being xenophobic creeps much of the time over actually not intervening to generalize about them. I mean, there's a type of person who they're doubly delighted because Trump has been cultivating xenophobia for nearly a year now, and he says vaguely isolationist statements. He's the dream for some of these people. But
yeah.
Unfortunately, I trust any politician, and at this point, perhaps we can call him a politician, to fearmonger about immigrants, but much better than they manage to stay out of interventions abroad. And he's been much more consistent about the immigration fearmongering anyway. Unfortunately, to some people, that's part of the appeal. So you can't really counter that when that's part of the appeal. I am bothered by certain critiques of Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I'm deeply disturbed by libertarians who think that who will vote for Hillary Clinton over him, because I think we need to not reward someone like that ever with the power she so desperately wants. That doesn't mean you should vote for Trump either. It just means, my God, do not even vaguely endorse. Don't do the little speech moment that says, I'm all right with Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. Just don't fucking do it if you're a real libertarian. I mean, it's not that hard to not vote.
I don't know why you'd bother voting for one of those. If you're really in the mood to go to the polls, then vote for, well, presumably Johnson's going to get the Libertarian nomination, which we shall see. But if he's the nominee, if you feel you have to vote, then go vote.
Or write in none of the above, which I did in 2008. Or if you want a fuck it, burn it all down candidate, Mr. John McAfee is a really excellent choice because he is occasionally insightful and frequently alarming. And definitely an improvement over Trump, and more of an insane badass than Trump anyway. Like if you want some weirdo like McAfee, go with McAfee. That's my endorsement. If you're looking for a loony, I have a soft spot for that sort of loony, not the fucking Trump kind. He's such a fraud.
I think we should say something too about the phony Republicans who are so upset by Trump.
Yes, much to say there.
Reason TV did a great piece, which you should look up. I put it up. I believe it's on my Facebook timeline, where they showed how mainstream Republicans have been saying, in maybe slightly more, guarded words and tones than Trump, same kinds of things on a whole bunch of issues. Oh. So the funny thing is, I mean, one of the high points was they had. You remember that speech that Romney gave a few weeks ago about Trump, about how we got to stop Trump, and he said Trump wants to put tariffs on Chinese Chinese goods and accuses them of being a currency manipulator, and this is terrible. And then they show a video of Romney, first of all, accepting Trump's endorsement in 2012. And complaining about how China is a currency manipulator, and you have to use tariffs against somebody like China. Romney. So everything Trump's saying, mainstream Republicans said, including McCain, people that ran for president as Republicans in the last, 10 years or so, taking the same position. So for them to be upset at all by Trump is a joke. And it just gives credence to one of my early observations, which I still think holds up, and I'm proud of it, so I keep reminding people of it, that the reason the Republican establishment is so upset with Trump is he's a caricature of it. And people generally don't like caricatures of themselves because it may exaggerate the worst traits. And that's what I think's going on there. He's not that different.
Well, that's what liberals have said that too. They say he's making this the right-wing subtext, the text, and neither liberals nor mainstream Republicans are very happy with that because he's doing it wrong. He's ruining it.
Well, and one of Trump's standard lines is, and lies and lines is that, and you can fill in the blank for the issue, but where he says it most often is, no one would be talking about immigration, illegal immigration, if it weren't for me. Well, that's crazy. The Republicans have been talking about building a wall on the border and cracking down on immigration forever. I mean, certainly since 2001. You know, so they shouldn't be upset by him. And of course, Cruz was not taking a very different position from Trump on immigration and on deportation. So it's
at this point, I don't even know what they're offended by, and some of it ties into the, I would say, mainstream liberal-esque sort of attitude that would go with voting for Hillary over Trump. Again, not that I'm advocating for Trump by any means, but that to speak badly about people, to be sort of unseemly, say untoward things the way Trump does, is worse than doing anything else. And again, we don't know what Trump would actually do if he were elected. He's a complete unknown, which to some people it's worth the risk, and I guess I see that, but it also is worth the risk to people who don't like immigration very much. So there's that.
No, but, I think the best scenario is gridlock, which means hope the Republicans hold the Congress and Clinton wins.
I don't know.
And then they hate her so much they want to thwart her on every possible issue.
For a while, I saw Trump as being more feasible for gridlock, but I forgot the magic of, well, he's got an R right by his name, and the people picked him, so I guess we're going to plod into line and get behind it.
Well, and that's something I've also been, I guess I could say, predicting. The people that think, oh, well, don't worry, they won't let Trump get away with the stupidest things. Congress will stop him. But wait a second. Trump, if Trump wins, let's say he rides this wave into the White House, and the Republicans hold the Congress, and if the House and members of the Senate begin to resist his program, isn't it likely he's going to go to them and say, you members of the House, you're all up for re-election 2 years from now, and a third of the Senate, you're up for re-election 2 years from now. I will primary anybody that doesn't get on board right now. And as if to make that begin to come true, you heard what Sarah Palin said over the weekend about Paul Ryan. So even while Trump is planning to meet with Ryan on Thursday and possibly iron out differences, which that seems crazy because I don't see how the kinds of things can be ironed out unless Ryan just totally capitulates. I'm not a fan of Ryan, but I don't see how given what he said, I don't see how we can then say, all right, Trump has said the right words to me, I'm okay now. But Palin said his career is over, barring a miracle. He will be cantered, meaning Eric Cantor. Eric Cantor, remember, got defeated in the primary by an unknown, unfunded Tea Party candidate because Cantor was seen as too much of an establishment Republican. So it's already begun. What I feared that Trump would do, if for recalcitrant members of Congress, has already begun. Now Trump was asked about it, and he wouldn't say, "Yeah, I approve of that." He can't do that. He's meeting Ryan on Thursday. He simply said, "I like Sarah Palin a lot. She's an early endorser of me, but she's independent. She's free to say what she wants." So he didn't disavow it, but he also didn't endorse it. But I have a feeling he knew darn well she was going to say that. He wants the thought planted that we will canter anybody who's not with me. So there goes gridlock.
Yeah.
If Trump is president and the Republicans hold the Congress. I'd rather take my chances. Not that I'm going to vote for her, but I'd rather take my chances with.
I will come over there if you vote for her.
You don't realize how painful it is for me to even be saying this. In a million years, I never would have dreamed I would have taken any bet that there's no way I'd ever.
I will seriously. I don't even know where you live, but I will come over there if you vote for her.
Oh no, I wouldn't. I'm not going to vote. First of all, I'm not going to vote because I'm not going to register. I don't want to register in California, so I'm not.
Okay.
And I'm not going to vote absentee in my old state, so I won't be voting, and I won't mind. Anyway, I think gridlock is as usual. Is the best we can hope for. We'll see. I hope Johnson does well. Of the three of them, I hope Johnson gets the nomination because as a former governor, he'll get some attention from the media that I think the others won't get. I mean, he was on CNN this morning, and just maybe we'll see more of that. I hope he gets the 15%. Because it's one of those catch-22s. It's an old point.
Right.
You got to get on TV to get in the polls, but you got to be in the polls for the TV to notice you and bring you on TV. So that's a problem. But he was at 11 at that Monmouth poll not that long ago. So he's starting at a pretty high base. It would be wonderful to have him in the debates. Wouldn't you love to see him in the debates with Hillary and Trump? I don't know if Trump would know what to do with the guy.
I almost want to see McAfee in the debates more, though.
Well,
I just have such a soft spot for that kind of lunatic. I really do.
Yeah, but I have a feeling in this context maybe we want somebody who's a little more boring, and that's
oh no,
that's Gary Johnson.
Totally, I think for the party's sake, Gary Johnson's the correct choice. And even though I know a lot of people who are not fans of him, I always have a soft spot for anyone who can talk to me like a human being, especially if they're a politician.
He seemed pretty good today. When I used to see him on TV occasionally in 2012, I thought he was very boring. He seemed pretty, maybe he's been training or something. He was better today on, I don't know who he was with, Chris Cuomo. He seemed better. He didn't say anything about foreign policy, unfortunately, but
that was always one of his weak spots, too.
Yeah.
That's what I pestered him about in person in 2012, and I like him because he talked to me. You know, he was in the middle of this little DC Yay Me rally, and he took the time to actually engage with me while I was completely annoying and was like, Gary Johnson, why are you mediocre on foreign policy? Talk to me right now. And he did. That means he's, a human, but it doesn't mean he's correct. So
I'm watching closely how libertarians are being referred to when they are in these panel discussions on CNN. I'm stuck with CNN. I don't have full cable, so I don't get to. I'm deprived of Fox and MSNBC. But anyway, so it's funny because they're talking about how Republicans are searching for a third party, a third candidate. It's kind of late to get on all the ballots if you're starting a new party. I think it's maybe impossible. And a lot of times they don't even mention the Libertarian Party. It's like the elephant in the room there. I shouldn't say elephant because that's Republican. It's like whatever. It's like the Statue of Liberty sitting standing in the room there, and nobody wants to notice her. But then once in a while they do mention the Libertarian Party, but then it's full of misinformation. So I heard one correspondent say, well, the problem with the Libertarian or Green Party is they're not on all 50 states ballots. Well, that's wrong. The Libertarian Party is on all 50 states. And then another one said, hey, you can be a delegate to the Libertarian Convention. All you need to do is buy a ticket. That makes you a delegate. And then this person said, it was a woman, I forget who it was, Molly Ball from The Atlantic. She said, and libertarians are for the free market, so they'll have no problem with someone buying the nomination. Well, first of all, you can buy a ticket to attend the convention, but that doesn't make you a delegate. She made it sound like if you buy the entry, pay the entry fee, you're a delegate.
Why would they have a woman like that talking about libertarians? I mean,
she's a political correspondent for The Atlantic. I don't know.
I mean, that's very annoying. I mean, I guess I understand why you can't have a libertarian talk about libertarians because that would be like biased or something.
Well, this was a round table of journalists.
Yeah, well, God, it would help to have someone who knows what they're talking about.
Right. They say things then they don't know. Those are two big misstatements right there. And the fact is, you can go and attend the convention, and if you want to get on the floor and have and watch and stuff like that, you pay something. I haven't been at a convention since 1983. It's been a while, but that doesn't make you a delegate. You go to a state convention and put your name in, and then you can run to be a delegate. So it's not that anybody can show up and be a delegate. So that person, the facts were just wrong.
It would have made a good article. I wish I had thought, however long ago, to try to be a delegate because that would have been sort of an entertaining article idea. I'm still thinking about going down to the LP convention in case anything interesting happens. But
is it in Florida?
It is. Well, I've never been to Florida, though I don't.
Where is it in Florida? Miami or
Orlando?
Orlando. Oh, so you can
Capitalist paradise.
You can always go to Disney World if it gets boring.
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Well, I've been to some of them, and I was once chairman of the platform committee.
Yeah.
I was once a national vice chairman.
No.
From 1981 to 1983.
I was not alive back then, I'd like to point out, just to make everyone feel uncomfortable.
So, but I left the party in 1983.
Did you? a lot of God, the early 80s, it's when they lost all the good people, didn't they?
Well, there was a great fight for the nomination in 1883. They used to meet a year before because they were still had to do a lot of ballot access stuff. Mm-hmm. So you needed to have a candidate's name, so they had to get like a year start, which wasn't really great for publicity, right? The other parties were having their conventions a year from then, so the convention was 83, even though the election was 84, and it was a big fight between a great contest between Earl Ravenel, a name you may or may not recognize, who was a Cato foreign policy analyst, professor at Georgetown, and a man with very good credentials on foreign policy, who did a lot of writing for Cato in the earlier days, anti-NATO, intervention, and but he was seen as the Crane candidate, and Crane was definitely behind him, and which meant a lot of people then couldn't be for him, because the Murray Rothbard faction and other factions were against them, and they put up David Bergland, who was a former chairman of the party and had run for office in California several times, and he was in the Rothbard wing, and so that was the big fight, and it went several ballots, and Ravenel, and I was on Ravenel's side because I thought Ravenel would get a respectful hearing from editorial boards. This guy had published in foreign policy journals. I thought, great opportunity here, and even Justin Raimondo broke with the Rothbard faction and the Radical Caucus and endorsed Ravenel because of his foreign policy credentials.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And Eric Garris as well, who of course is antiwar.com. And I've
heard many tales from Eric Garris, but this is sort of putting the pieces together.
The grounds for endorsing Ravenel, which created quite a bit of turmoil within the Radical Caucus. Their grounds were the Rothbard slogan, or the Radical Caucus slogan, the centrality of foreign policy. I mean, they were teaching libertarians foreign policy is central, something Ron Paul said in 2008 and 2012, right? And he was willing to not talk about the welfare state. First things first. Well, they endorsed Ravenel because of his, I was going to say mainstream credential. Well, in a way, not mainstream views, but mainstream credentials, given his teaching post and how he published in the respectable journals, but always, maybe not the hardest core, but very, it was clear what he was saying, that he thought the U.S. should not be an empire and should get out of those places. So it was in New York City, a very exciting convention in 1983. Anyway, a little venture down history past the presidential fights. But I was going to say something about before we have to go. What time is it?
Well, we started a little late, so I honestly think we have 10 minutes left. Honestly.
What worries me about Trump, I mean, I realize you can pick out a couple of isolated sentences, even assuming he doesn't contradict them tomorrow. But that is not enough to make me feel better about it, because you have to look at the whole package it comes in. And I see it coming in this package of a cult of personality, right? I'm going to make great deals. It's very, very personal. And I really do think this is going to be an inflammatory term, I know, and I'll then explain it. But this is really an example of what the Germans, pre-Hitler, by the way, called the Führer principle, the leadership principle, the leader principle, that the leader is right. He's presenting himself as the leader. He's going to make deals. It's all very personal, right? I mean, once in a while he talks about, I may have to compromise with Congress, but he's going to do this. I'm going to make America great, and that worries me. Even if you can find a couple of sentences which, just looked at in isolation, sound good, look at the guy and how he presents himself, and that is enough to worry me. And I think that's a real worry.
I mean, I see that. I wonder how much worse he is than the normal politician who has that tendency, the personal tendency, can fix it tendency. And Trump just has sort of a more pure version of that without the policy, fancy, wonky, or academic covering for the bullshit core. Trump is only the bullshit core. And the
well, the fact that he feels the fact that he doesn't think he even needs to hide it is enough to worry me. Sure, all these guys running for president. I'm not talking about the libertarians now, but all these guys and women that are running for president, women who are running for president, obviously want power. Obviously, they think they're the smartest people in the country and ought to be running things. But the presentation is so different, and I think the way Trump presents it, it is this cult of personality, right? They don't really care what he says within certain limits. I think within certain limits, they don't care what he says. He's right when he said if I go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, I won't lose any support. I do think there are limits. I think if he woke up tomorrow and said, "Hey, folks, I've been thinking things over overnight. I abstained from tweeting one night just so I could think, and I've decided I've been wrong on a couple things. I think we should have unilateral free trade. I don't care what other countries do. I hope they follow us, but I don't care. I'm knocking down all the barriers to imports, and we're going to have open borders." I don't think that his mob will follow him at that point. No, because it's him. It is him, and they perceive him saying to the establishment, F you, or giving him the fingers. They like that, but I don't think that means they would accept any principle from him, because he's also feeding the biases that Brian Kaplan writes about, the anti-trade bias, the anti-foreign bias, those various things. So if he tried to use the Trump, people skills, on behalf of a libertarian program, I don't think he could pull it off. And it reminds me of, I don't know if we've talked about this before or not. I know I've talked to other people. If you remember the Fountainhead, did we talk about the Gail Winan phenomenon? I think Gail Winan, if you remember the Fountainhead, everybody out there remember the Fountainhead. He's the newspaper publisher, right? The powerful newspaper publisher whose paper he believes manipulates the mob, and he loves it because he grew up. He's a man who had great potential, but he made the mistake in Rand's story of believing that there's really only choices: either you rule or you be ruled. And darn it, he's not going to be ruled, so he has to be the one who rules. And he does this through his publishing empire and his newspaper. He made the mistake, that later on Rourke teaches him that he's made this mistake, and that wasn't a choice. You don't have to choose. But anyway, while he thinks he's the ruler, when he wants to come to Rourke's defense, when they're going to put Rourke on trial for blowing up the building because they designed it in violation of his plan for it, he now thinks, I own the mob. If I tell the mob support, and they've already been whipped up against Rourke, right? This individualist doesn't care about social good and all that. He says, I can change them. They'll change on a dime if I tell them to. Well, it turns out it's not right. He couldn't. They abandoned Winan as soon as Winan tried to get them to be pro-Rourke. So they were willing to go with Winan as long as they fed their prejudices. But as soon as he said, no, you should do something else that went against their prejudices, then they dumped Winan. And I think it's the same with Trump. If Trump, tomorrow unveils himself as a libertarian, I don't think those people are going to say, hey, if Trump's saying it, I guess it's right. Go, Trump. I don't think that would happen. I think they would abandon him.
To use the usual easy example, if Hitler woke up sometime in 1940 and said, those darn Jews aren't so bad after all, what would have happened? I mean, at a concentrate level, if you're talking to a very personal mob, I don't think you can get them to follow you. But when you have the leader of a nation state and maybe you're doing stuff in the shadows and they're sort of tolerating it, but not, I don't know. There's a complication to this, I think, that...
But look, almost everybody says that Trump's genius, if you want to use that word, is that he's able to tap into this mood. Well, that sort of goes in my direction of my argument. If he stopped tapping into the mood and tried to change the mood, I don't think that would work. I don't think they'd say, you know what, he's right. We were wrong about Mexicans and foreign goods and free trade. Damn it, why didn't we think of that? Okay, Trump, we're with you on the new program now. Laissez-faire, laissez-faire. I don't think so. I can't see that happening. I mean, I'd like to see it tested, but I don't see it happening.
you get people swearing who actually like Trump, either enthusiastically or reluctantly, swearing that somehow it's also about a change in DC and getting sick of the politicians and all these things that you and I would at least say, okay, that's something, hating on DC and demanding somebody else. But there is this not even undercurrent, but just current of the xenophobic, alt-right, total creepiness thing. And I wonder sort of what the proportions are, whether there really is, my God, anyone else in DC aspect, or if that's pure bullshit and really just the sort of propelling force of the Trump thing is just, you know, Jeff Tucker's worst fear. It is all alt-right.
Well, I don't see those as two different things. I think they hate DC because DC didn't deliver on building the wall, bringing our jobs back, keeping foreigners from taking our jobs, quote, our jobs, and those other things that Trump talks about. I don't think those are two things. They hate DC because of that. I don't think they just hate DC because they hate DC. They think they sent a whole bunch of. It's just it goes back to the Reason TV piece. The mainline Republicans. I won't. Maybe that's not the term. I don't mean the country club type Republicans, but even they've indulged in this in order to keep those voters in their camp, right? They've made them think, hey, we're like you, we're for this too. We hate the same things you hate. So they send these candidates to Washington, but then the candidates don't deliver for one reason or another. Maybe they can't fully deliver because the Democrats stopped them. There is a Democrat in the White House. Or some other reason that they don't really mean it. They just manipulated that crowd to get their votes, and they didn't really intend on doing it anyway. But that's why they hate D.C., because they didn't deliver on that stuff we want. Not just, oh, you're from D.C., we don't like you. We don't care what you stand for.
I mean,
that's what I think is going on.
Yeah. At the core, he isn't saying very much libertarian. And I agree.
He doesn't say anything libertarian.
Prioritizing foreign policy, I see the straw certain people grasp at, but they are very flimsy indeed. You know, the imaginary, I've tried to write about this too, the imaginary Donald Trump, this businessman who hates DC, you know, is as anti-war as Justin dreams at night that it's possible for him to be. All that would be great, but you know, this critique of DC is never based on what we know to be true, the limits of their knowledge, their arrogance, the impossibility of central planning, the jackbooted elements of the federal and state governments. It's never about that. It's not working, and Donald Trump's going to just get in there and just whip it into shape as if he can, as if that's possible.
Yeah.
Alone should disqualify him. I mean, I grant that every Democrat oversells their commitment to civil liberties and pretends they want small government, and they're all liars. But he's not lying, he's just saying a bunch of shit. It's never the government should leave you alone.
No, he never says.
It's never his shtick. It's never his shtick.
Right. Has he ever? He doesn't even talk about the Constitution. You know my views.
It's sort of refreshing because he's not the Republican like bullshitter who pretends to care about at least minarchy. Just in this paradoxical way, because he's not even bothering. He cares about that. But that's no argument for any libertarian to go near him.
So in other words, we're in a really sad state when we find refreshing an openly big government Republican. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, actually, a little bit. It's more honest. And
he doesn't say, let's cut out this foreign intervention. It's very costly. He does say it's costly, but he doesn't say, let's cut this out so the taxpayers can keep their own money. No, he says, let's cut it out so we can rebuild the infrastructure and the hollowed out military. That's what he says, and a lot of other Republicans, they may not press the infrastructure part. They certainly talk about any money saved will go into the military. If you save it somewhere else, it's going into the military. Cruz talked about that.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's just a slightly more concentrated form of the bullshit, but without the pain that perhaps people have learned to distrust. But they're not. There's almost nothing libertarian to say about him because he's so not interested in even.
No, he doesn't talk about. You know my views on the Constitution, but when Republicans generally talk about the Constitution, it is in the context. I'm not saying they mean it, but it's in the context of limits on government power, right? He doesn't ever talk about that. He talks about the Second Amendment. That's the only reference I ever hear him make to the Constitution. I'm glad. I agree with you that it's nice not to have the hypocrisy, but I don't understand why people who do believe in limited government or no government would be getting excited about it. Right?
And it's his expectations for himself and what he can do as the leader is completely antithetical to the idea, not just that there's a moral component to government overreach, but there's a practical failing, which he literally does not seem to believe exists at all. His will, the triumph of his will, that can get it all done.
Right. That's right.
And those incompetent people in D.C., the ones you all hate, are just not as awesome.
He does not see a systemic problem. He does not see a systemic problem in the way we Hayekians and libertarians and Austrians see it. It's just the wrong CEO has been running things. Incompetents have been running things. Put me in, and there won't be a problem. He never even gives a glimmer, a hint that he thinks there's a systemic problem. And you saw what Jon Stewart said this week, right? Jon Stewart blamed the Democrats for Trump, and what's the reason? They failed to show the American people that a government that's effective can also be efficient. That's how Jon Stewart thinks the Democrats gave us. Yes, of course he believes it can be both effective and efficient, but they failed to show people that, and that cleared the way for a demagogue. The Democrats then lost their legitimacy and paving the way for a demagogue. Trump thinks it can be effective and efficient in a very large scale, not on a small scale. Not that he's shrinking it and making it efficient.
Right.
He's going to have it big, and he thinks it'll be efficient because he's a brilliant businessman.
And again, everyone running for president has enough ego to think that they and they alone can make it better. Pure, more, as you say, demagogue, I don't know, version of that. He's just the concentration of all the bullshit of politics. And now, we didn't cover, we don't really have time to cover, of course, is the people who think, well, he's an empty suit. So if he somehow got the right people around him, over something, Hillary Clinton perhaps, John Bolton, William Kristol, and Mike Huckabee to sit around in his cabinet, and then where will we be? In a very bad place.
Yeah. And I have a feeling he's not one who actually does take advice. I think he gives orders.
Sure doesn't seem like it.
He's used to giving orders. He runs a company where he can say, do this, or you're fired.
In my heart, I believe the random article where the woman who worked for the super PAC said that he doesn't want to win. He wanted to put up an impressive showing. I think he really is a pure narcissist more than anything. He wanted attention. He got more than he ever dreamed possible, even he. And now he doesn't know what to do. Maybe he kind of thinks, maybe I can do this. Maybe I will be awesome. But he still doesn't know what the hell to do. And the best thing that could happen to him is that the Republicans could steal the nomination away from him, and then he could be aggrieved, whiny, and the leader of a whiny little cult for the rest of his days. And he'll always know that they stole it from him and that they're corrupt. And he might even be right about those 2 points, but it would be so much fun, and he wouldn't have to worry about running a country at all. He'd just be.
And we do know that Trump wine sells much better than Trump vodka.
God damn, is Trump wine.
Which I'll have to put on Facebook. I will have to put that on Facebook right now.
This is God, that he's some alpha male. It's just a whole other ridiculous premise. All the time, that's all he does.
He does.
Very macho.
But don't forget, his theme is don't forget the aggrieved nation shtick, right? So he's aggrieved, and so it works very well, right? He's personally aggrieved, and he's gonna, and the nation, and he sees the nation as aggrieved, so he's gonna straighten all that out.
He sure is. I think it's President Hillary or the Republicans will shamelessly steal it, and maybe Trump will help them steal it. I don't think he's going to make it, but my God, has he gotten farther.
Okay, here's a scenario, and someone else has written this, but Johnson gets enough to deprive the other two of a majority of the Electoral College, right? You need 270. It gets thrown into the House. Now, in this one scenario that somebody wrote, Johnson actually ends up winning, because the Republicans cut a deal.
I do, but
the president's the House cuts a deal with the Senate. By the way, it's the old Congress, not the new Congress, that does this voting. If there's no because it's before the new one's even sworn in, right? And they cut a deal with the Senate that the Senate, the deal is they all hate Trump, right? So we pick Johnson, the House says, and you guys pick the Republican vice presidential nominee. The author of this was assuming it was going to be Cruz. I don't think now it's going to be Cruz. But anyway, you pick the VP guy. We'll pick Johnson, and then so it's Johnson and whoever the Republican VP is.
John Kasich, because he's the most vice presidential man I've ever seen.
And
presidential and very vice presidential.
But here's the excitement. What would Trump and his supporters do if the House of Representatives deprives Trump of the presidency? What would happen?
Whine some more. He'll just whine.
Whine.
I don't think we'll have some sort of.
He's predicting riots in Cleveland.
I mean, there'll be whiny riots. I don't know. Maybe Hitler was whiny too. I guess I don't speak German, so I can't get the finer points.
I don't associate him with whining.
Oh.
But hey, no. The person you just named, I don't want to utter his name.
Oh, Hitler?
Yeah.
No, Hitler, Justin Armando. Who are we not naming? Voldemort? I can't remember.
No, the guy you just named. Yeah, Hitler. I don't associate him with whining, ranting, not whining. We should probably put an end to this, since we've gone off the deep end.
Into all sorts of things.
We've gone off the deep end.
No. Yes, we really have.
You have anything to plug?
Trump.
Or are you just going to do your genetic plug? People, stay tuned at Liberty.me.
Oh, that.
Generic.
I wasn't offered any. I don't know. I think entertaining Will and his Unbiased America is on tomorrow night. So that's. I don't know. Will's better when I'm around to balance his horrible conservatism. But you could watch that if you wanted to. You should go read Sheldon's work at all sorts of places like Reason and his Free Association blog.
And Lucy.
Hopefully I'll have and I work on for poor Eric this week. I'll have many more Playboy things, which I keep writing.
Yeah, I've been busy. If you notice the date of my last article, it's been a while at Anti-War. I've been busy making money.
Poor sweet Anti-War. I know. I'm always straight with Eric there. I'm like, I have to do something that pays me more. I'm so sorry. So this is why you should donate to him. Also, yes. I am going to do a book review for the American Conservative. That might be months from now that actually appears. I honestly don't know how far ahead they are. It's about Raoul Wallenberg. So I'm literally going to get paid to read about Raoul and then write about Raoul Wallenberg, which is literally the dream. So for in the future.
Excellent.
I mean, really, that's what I hope for in life is someone paying me to read about Ralph Waldo.
Okay.
Oh man, deep end. We went off. Wow, it's the longest one ever. We should waste more time. No.
Sure.
Thanks for watching, everybody. People who
Thanks,
are always
everybody.
there. You know who you are. Audience, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Again, hopefully we won't be as punch drunk, but again, Trump.
I'm
Blame it on
stone sober.
Trump.
I'm stone sober. I'm drunk on
Punch
Trump.
drunk doesn't. Punch drunk does. Look it up. It does not mean actually drunk.
Oh, okay. Okay. I don't know. I will look it up. Thank you. All right. See you in 2.
Goodbye, Sheldon. Goodbye, everyone.
Signing off.
Bye.